So hi everyone, welcome to the 2021 Grow Your Own webinar with the Square Foot Gardening Foundation. Here is the agenda for today. PlantPure Communities will introduce the webinar and we will hear from Laura and Steve Bartholomew at the Square Foot Gardening Foundation. Then we have 5 expert speakers who I will introduce later on. And at the end of the webinar, we will have a live Q&A session, and then we will share a discount code for the Level 1 Square Foot Gardening course. Next slide, please. So my name is Ella Stevens, and I work with PlantPure Communities. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and our mission is to build stronger, healthier, and more sustainable communities by sharing the evidence-based nutritional science of Dr. T. Colin Campbell, author of the China Study, which demonstrates that optimal health may be achieved through a whole food, plant-based diet. We connect hundreds of thousands of people through pods, which are local groups that support others in discovering to and transitioning a whole food, plant-based diet. You can get connected to a pod near you by visiting the pod map on plantpurecommunities.org. Next slide, please. And so we are very excited to partner with the Square Foot Gardening Foundation for a 4th year in a row. I'm sorry, sorry, Kelly, that's the pod map, and maybe next slide. Yeah, thanks. Our organizations have tremendous synergies, and together we hope to inspire people to utilize the Square Foot Gardening method to grow their own food at home and turn it into delicious plant-based meals. We encourage you not only to build a garden at home, but also in a pod or a community garden in your area so we can share the importance of healthy eating and local food all around the world. And next slide. On today's webinar, we will hear from these 5 Square Foot Gardening experts who are excited to share their knowledge and expertise with you on different aspects of Square Foot Gardening. We will hear from them a little bit later on, but now to kick off this webinar, we will start by watching a video about the 4 M's: the man, the method, the mission, and the movement. You will hear how the Square Foot Gardening Foundation is changing the world 1 square foot at a time.
And Ella, I'm doing a quick reset to make sure our sound and video are in here.
Yeah, and Kelly, if you haven't received our messages, there are some black blocks covering the slides that might just be chat windows or something. If you can close all additional windows. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, how you doing? On behalf of the Square Foot Gardening Foundation, I'm Rick Bickling, the How To Gardener. The story of Square Foot Gardening can be distilled down to the 4 M's: the man, the method, the mission, and the movement. When Mel Bartholomew retired in 1975, he joined the local community garden as a hobby and quickly realized how inefficient, time-consuming, and labor-intensive traditional row gardening was. Up to that point, centuries-old practice of tilling soil and planting crops in long rows, which allowed a horse or tractor to easily travel between the rows, had been applied to home gardening. As a civil engineer and efficiency expert, Mel knew that there had to be a better way. By focusing on the most basic yet important elements of home gardening, the soil, planting, spacing, weed control, and water usage, Mel did indeed find that better way. In 1976, Mel invented the Square Foot Gardening method. Mel's message was simple: grow more of your own food in less space with less waste while cutting cost, using less water, fewer seeds, and with less work. Gardening should be fun, simple, and easy to understand. In 1996, Mel started the Square Foot Gardening Foundation with the mission to help end world hunger 1 square foot at a time. At the Square Foot Gardening Foundation, our hope is to inspire people in communities around the world to easily learn how to grow much of their own food in a very small space, no matter where they live, the soil conditions, or what their circumstances are. Besides teaching individuals how to square foot garden via Mel's books and our new introductory Square Foot Gardening online course, we employ the principle of train the trainer. With our Certified Instructor or CI program, this advanced online SFG course provides the knowledge, tips, tools, and support necessary for a square foot gardener to be able to teach others how to become a successful square foot gardener. Our certified instructors exponentially increase our ability to help promote a greener, healthier, and more sustainable lifestyle with square foot gardening. Winston Churchill once said, "There's nothing wrong with change if it is in the right direction." From its humble beginnings as one man's attempt to make gardening easier for his local community garden to working towards solving world hunger, it's safe to say that square foot gardening was and will most assuredly continue to be a change in the right direction. Visit our website at squarefootgardening.org.
Okay, Laura.
I just want to say hello to everybody and welcome. I think Steve is up for this slide, Kelly.
All right.
Yeah. So we're going to introduce Steve Bartholomew first, as Mel's son. And Steve, take it away, and then I'll jump on.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. You know, it was 40 years ago that the first square foot gardening book was published, and backyard gardening hasn't been the same since. With over 2.5 million copies sold, square foot gardening has stood the test of time, and our publisher Quarto confirms it's still the #1 gardening book sold today. The foundation was created by my dad, and with a mission of helping ease world hunger 1 square foot at a time, the foundation has certainly had a busy year. Our new online course for both basic instruction and the more advanced certified instructor level was rolled out this last summer, and we are busy certifying new CIs weekly. One of those new CIs is Denver resident Gina Chilton. Now, Gina, when she became a CI, she heard about our grant program to assist CIs in humanitarian or educational efforts, and she got to work in her community. Once approved by the foundation, Gina's program consisted of having elevated square foot gardens in the front of 14 tiny homes built in the Denver community of Globeville. This wonderful effort is giving the underserved in that community an opportunity to learn to grow nutritious food and help instill a sense of pride in Denver. Thank you, Gina, for your efforts. This is one of many stories around the world that's taking place because of our certified instructor family and the important work being done at the foundation. Now, I would like to introduce back again Laura Bartholomew, who's going to talk about a unique effort currently underway in Guatemala. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, we have some great things happening around the world, and you can see what's been going on in Globeville with the tiny villages. Great place to square foot garden for those transitioning to permanent homes. But we want to talk about Cultiva. So if you could put up that slide, Kelly, we want to give you an idea of what's been going on in Guatemala. We've been working with Cultiva International now for a few years. And, you know, when I look at these photos, I just look at the joy of what they're doing there. You can see how proud that woman is of her accomplishment with the square foot garden down there in Cultiva International, who's been doing a great job down there, introducing square foot gardening to villagers. They have over 2,000 garden beds in Guatemala now. Greg and Lucy Jensen are the founders of Cultiva, and they truly have embodied the spirit of Square Foot Gardening Foundation's mission, which is to help end world hunger 1 square foot at a time, empowering people to grow healthy, nutritious food, no matter what their circumstances are. And Cultiva is really making a difference in Guatemala there, and other nations as well are working together with Square Foot Gardening. South Africa is one. And they also learn about good nutrition. They learn about hygiene. They learn about sanitation. And what's really cool about Cultiva is they don't just build boxes and leave them. They mentor them. They teach them everything that they need to know. They do follow up with them, with the families, and they really do support them. So this means that everybody has to go out and actually visit the families and make sure they're doing okay. So this all started really when one person took Square Foot Gardening seminar with Mel, that was Greg, and he embraced the core philosophy of the mission that Mel taught us, and that was to give a hand up, not a handout. So if you'd like to learn more about Cultiva, you can visit their website at www.cultivainternational.org. We'll be doing some work with them in the future. And Kelly, I think it's back to Ella at this point.
Yes, thank you, Laura and Steve. Now, I would quickly like to share our square foot gardening toolkit from the PPC website and our brand new fun and engaging gardening course. So first, the gardening toolkit contains basic information to help you get started with a square foot garden. There are sheets to help you organize a gardening workshop, learn about the square foot gardening method, or to start a community garden. And we will share the link to the toolkit in the chat so you can find that. And then on the next slide, Kelly, in addition, you can now enroll yourself in our free Grow Your Own Gardening course. So we have taken the information from the toolkit and added it to this fun platform. And it's an interactive course that takes you through the lectures step by step. And everyone is invited to check out the course to dive deeper into the square foot gardening method and to get growing this season. And we will also share the link for the course in the chat. And again, it's free to sign up and engaging to use the material. And so now it is time to hear from our panel of certified square foot gardeners who will share some of their expertise with you. And first up is Althea, who will speak about getting kids involved with gardening. So take it away, Althea.
Althea, can you unmute?
Oh, geez. Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. It's nice to be with you. Hello to all the people that are joining in from around the world. So I'm Althea Lewis, and I am a non-traditional educator. I'm a master gardener, environmental educator, and a square foot gardening instructor. And I use the garden as a living classroom. And using the square foot gardening method has given me a platform to achieve 3 important goals that I have as an educator. The first one of which is to connect children to nature, helping them to gain an appreciation of the natural world around them. And my second goal as an educator is to teach children where their food comes from and how to grow some of their own food. This goal, I feel, will help them to achieve a healthier lifestyle later on in life and help them to make healthier, more nutritious choices when it comes to food. The third goal is to help children to become better stewards of themselves as they make these healthy lifestyle choices, but also better stewards of our world and of each other. So, and I believe those 3 goals can be achieved through teaching children how to garden and how to garden the square foot garden way. Because I really believe in the maxim about that says, give a man a fish, he eats for a day, but teach a man to fish or teach a child to fish, and they eat for a lifetime. And so in the world of education, the acronym of STEAM stands for science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. And the garden provides a rich canvas which enables children to learn in such a way that they're activating all their senses while they're having fun and learning about gardening. So they're planting a seed and observing how it grows. That's science. They are building trellises to support plants as they grow. They're building 1 by 1 foot square boxes and figuring out how much soil it needs. That's engineering and math. Next slide, please. They're creating stepping stones. Here you have children building trellises. They're creating stepping stones to place in the garden. That's art. They're charting plant growth and patterns on spreadsheets. That's technology. So in the garden, they are engaging in all of those things. And they're engaging their senses: sight, sound, smells, taste. I remember one child in the garden. I think this is a couple of years back. I think when I was teaching at one of the YMCA's, and I remember the child saying, after tasting chives for the first time, they said, "Oh my goodness, it looks like grass, but tastes like onions." And I thought, yes, these are the discoveries that we make in the garden, the connections. So children are learning by doing, exploring, observing, and experiencing firsthand. Next slide, please. There are important skills that children are learning. They're learning. This is one of the programs that I did with children in the garden. They were learning to build. As I said, this really incorporates everything that STEAM is all about: building boxes and building confidence in at the same time. Next slide, please. In addition, they are learning valuable skills, working responsibility. They're planting, they're watering, they're monitoring for pests, cooperation, teamwork. But most of all, I think when kids garden and when people garden, they're building community. And as a gardener, and I think most gardeners, they're positive and they're hopeful. And, you know, we sow a tiny seed in the soil, and we patiently wait for it to germinate and sprout. And as the plant grows, it nurtures something within us. And we are hopeful that one day that tiny little plant will someday also nurture our bodies. So as an educator, my hope is that as I teach young children about square foot gardening and where food comes from and how to grow some of their own food, that these lessons will ultimately enrich their lives in the future. And that's my goal as an educator. And teaching square foot gardening has been, as I said, the platform to get to that point.
Thank you, Althea.
And up next is our fellow CI, Bob Markey.
Yes, hello. And from Wickenburg, Arizona, it's a good afternoon to everybody. When I was a kid, gardening wasn't fun. It was something that my mother said, or my father said, okay, you got to get out there and weed those beans. And it was like, oh gosh, do I have to do that? You know, it's August, it's 95 degrees, and it was a chore. Well, as time went on, I found that gardening spoke to me differently. And I learned in 2008 about square foot gardening and received my instructor course and certification from Mel Bartholomew, and found that gardening didn't have to be a lot of work at all. And though you would be outside certainly in August and it's hot, but it can be fun. And I took that experience and the certification and walked to my neighborhood YMCA and said, hey, this is the same YMCA I learned to swim at as a kid. And I spoke with the director and said, I have a little extra time in my hands, and I have experience in gardening, and specifically in square foot gardening. How about if we take our summer campers and teach them square foot gardening? Well, fast forward 13 years later, the square foot gardening program for YMCA's is taking place now in New Jersey at 3 YMCA's. And it's proven that kids can have a lot of fun in gardening, and especially with our special events. And I thought, let's use the end of our camp season in August of each year to have each week a special event. And it started with an event that I created about 20 years ago in our downtown, and that's called the Great Zucchini Race. And it's a hit. It's I believe on YouTube, on the Square Foot Gardening channel. And what's happened is that the theme is grow them, race them, and eat them. So you see the young boy in the center photo. We take the kids take a zucchini. They insert bamboo skewers, which are the axles in the front and the back, and then use vegetables to create the wheels. So in this case, it was carrots. And then we place them on a racetrack, much like a soapbox derby. It's gravity fed, not fancy. And the kids race them. And they have a wonderful time. And there's always a lot of excitement and a lot of smiling. So the second special event is called Seed to Sale. Again in August, and this is in New Jersey, our harvest season. The kids will, in the morning, our summer campers, harvest their vegetables and flowers from our Square Foot Garden at the YMCA, and put the harvest into their little carts and wagons and pull them down the street about 3 blocks with supervision, of course, to our local farmers market. And there they sell their produce. So it's an experience from the time they planted their radish seed to selling their Swiss, as mistakenly, but very cutely written here, Swiss char. And it's a wonderful experience for the kids. They have another event where they have a lot of fun, and they're learning the basics of much of life. And the third special event is the Taste of the Garden. A local chef, we asked, would you come over and prepare a lunch for these young campers using the products from the garden that they grew? And he said, yeah, sure. And that he did. In fact, we've had local chefs from restaurants in our area participate each year in the Taste of the Garden. And one of the big hits is the pizza from the Square Foot Garden. So the oregano and thyme and various herbs will be added to the fresh tomatoes, and the kids have pizza from the garden. And what we've learned is that there was a question to me, and people were wondering, well, do we just eat organically, or can we have frozen vegetables? And what we came up with, and I think it rings true for all of us, and that fresh vegetables are great and they're good. They're good for us. Better is fresh organic veggies. And the best of all are fresh organic veggies right from our Square Foot Garden. So we're able to accomplish that in our YMCA camps. We found that the kids from all backgrounds, and we have an urban YMCA, we have kind of the blue collar YMCA in my hometown, and then an affluent one. So these children that are coming from all these different backgrounds, cultures, are all having a good time. The basic.
Bob,
Yeah.
we're going to have to wrap it up.
Oh, okay. I think I've done it then. And lastly would be, we can put these gardens, these Square Foot Gardens, in very limited space, and it's cost effective and easy to create. Thank you. And I'll pass it on to our next Square Foot instructor, Emilio Martinez, a good friend of mine and a great instructor.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks, everyone. My name is Emilio. I'm in Newark, New Jersey. I'm actually an urban planner by background, and I came to gardening before I knew Square Foot Gardening. I came to gardening through building community gardens and urban farms here in our city to help address some of the food insecurity issues and nutrition issues. Next slide, please. So the USDA actually, in 2016, they released a handbook on urban agriculture, which is what my organization focuses on. And we were, I was very pleased to see this, because I think they really identified many of the issues that the urban farmers and community gardeners that I've met along my 12 years of doing this work have identified. So what you see on the screen there are not only things that the USDA has identified for gardening or farming in small settings and in dense urban areas, but these reflect, in my view, the experience of myself and others in my network for the last 12 years. Next slide, please. And so, you know, again, as you learned earlier from some of the panelists, square foot gardening is not like traditional farming. And that video in the beginning, I think, showed us the old-fashioned sort of row farming. But here are those issues again that the USDA identified and that I think are accurate challenges in urban agriculture. And as I speak about each one, you're going to see how urban growers are using the square foot gardening as a solution. So land access is number one. Where are you going to fit your garden or your food growing in a city? Well, with square foot gardening, as Bob mentioned, we can fit in very small spaces, including vertical spaces up on roofs or balconies or on the curb between buildings and the street. Soil quality. Soil quality is a huge issue everywhere, but in urban areas, we always recommend building raised beds and bringing in new soil on top of your existing soil. In some cases, even putting down a barrier like a weed cloth or even just layers of cardboard and wood chips. Mel's mix is the perfect solution because then you're not exposing your food and your plants to what may be in urban soils, which unfortunately is oftentimes, you know, they're more subject to heavy metals or pollution than other communities. Water is one of the biggest issues community gardens that urban farmers face, often borrowing it from neighboring buildings on an empty lot, or being by a school building or something like that, an institution where you can draw a hose from. But square foot gardening is great because you can access water from a neighboring building, even if you're on, like, let's say an empty lot or a school property, because you can bring that garden so close. And because you don't need a lot of water, you water really directly on the plants. Capital, you know, funding and financing for things to get your agriculture started. Well, obviously, square foot gardening, especially for a family, can be done at a very low cost, and you can actually do it with all found and recycled materials. Infrastructure is another huge issue that comes up in all urban areas. But you don't need necessarily, like I mentioned before, a large lot that has water lines and electric lines and all those things. You can really garden in creative spaces with square foot gardening and draw upon the infrastructure of some of your neighbors or the buildings that are allow you to bring your square foot garden next to them. And then urban farmers care about distribution and training. I'll go through those more quickly. But we here in Newark both donate food, but we also tap a lot of small growers into markets. We found that even with something like square foot gardening or small urban gardens, you can form co-ops and you can pull your small amounts of produce together to help distribute. Training, there's plentiful books on square foot gardening and YouTube channels, and the foundation's materials are great and can get anybody, I think, a good start. And then finally, safety and security. This is something we worry about in urban areas, but as we know, the small and square nature of the square foot garden, it's easy to fence it in or to put over some pest protective netting, more so than a bigger farm. And on these slides, you'll see community garden where square foot gardening is happening right now in Newark, and some of our great local funders, the Whole Cities and Whole Kids Foundation, who help support, as well as the Square Foot Garden Foundation, of course. Here's an example of how, if the benchmark is one person or two people, one to two people kind of eating off a 4x4 grid, then you can kind of visually see here how a family of four, also with some supplemental pots, might be able to feed themselves in a very small space. Here's just an example you'll find in the square foot literature of, diversifying your diet in that small space. And next slide, please. And then finally, we just pulled some images of some interesting rooftop balcony gardens in this case. So you can see that in all kinds of urban settings where you're surrounded by glass and concrete as the norm, you can use square foot gardening to access green space and access food in very tight areas. And with that, I think
Emilio.
that's my last slide.
Thanks, Emilio. Amy's
Yes.
ready to join us.
Hey everyone, this is a lot of fun, lots of information here. I'm Amy Guyette Hall, the Square Foot Gardening Health Coach, helping all ages and abilities to boost their health from a square foot gardening box. And next slide, Kelly. So here we've got a picture of some square foot gardening beds, and what really is a square foot garden? We build a box, we fill it with perfect soil called Mel's Mix, which I'll touch on next. And then we put a grid on top, and it's really that grid. You can see the crisscross, the checkerboard. It's really the grid that defines the garden, the raised bed box, as a square foot garden. And hopefully that square foot gardening box will be close to your kitchen door, close to a water source. And as we saw in the video in the beginning, we do not need expensive equipment. We do not need a horse. We don't need a tractor or a rototiller. Mel used to say, what we need is right here, right at the end of our arm. We just need our hands and maybe a couple little tools like a trowel for adding compost or planting seedlings, or a pencil for moving and planting seedlings gently into that Mel's Mix, or maybe some little scissors for snipping an extra seedling that's not doing as strong as the one right next to it, or for cutting some lettuce leaves. But really pinching is all we need to do. And maybe a bucket for sun-warmed water where we can gently water our growing plants. And next slide. So what is Mel's Mix? So Mel's Mix consists of 3 ingredients: compost, peat moss, and coarse vermiculite. The most important ingredient we feel is the compost. And where does compost come from? Compost comes from, and everybody anywhere can make compost, just like anybody everywhere can grow food. Compost comes from your vegetable scraps. So our PlantPure community people have lots of vegetable scraps. Those are all of our green things, and coffee grounds and tea bags. And then we need some brown, we need dried leaves, we need torn newspaper, we need torn up cardboard or maybe extra egg cartons. And we mix that all together. We mix, mash, moisten, and move. And that is our compost: decomposed food scraps, vegetable scraps, and our browns, greens and browns. And that is really, as we teach our children to eat the colors of the rainbow, I kind of like to think about this as where the nutrients all come from for our vegetable plants. It's really the compost that feeds and nurtures all of the variety of vegetables in our crazy quilt. It's like lots of squares, right? And something different in each square. And the items are just the perfect mix, which a lot to learn on that. We'll share more in another video or in the toolkit. I like to think about a nibble garden. So for our first-time gardeners, grow the small things that grow quickly. Let your farmers at your farmer's market grow the big juicy tomatoes. But for y'all, plant 1 sun gold or a cherry tomato in a square. Plant 4 lettuces of a variety. I thought this was a great visual. Maybe we're just thinking romaine lettuce. There's so many different vegetables. So we want to eat the colors of the rainbow and plant those. We want to eat and grow a crazy quilt. And someone had asked, what is the most important crop you could grow in a square foot garden? And as a health coach, I would say that that is our dark leafy greens. So our kale, Swiss chard, even broccoli, cabbage, all of those leaves, arugula, spinach, so good for you. Loaded with magnesium, vitamins A, C, E, K, lots of fiber, chlorophyll. That's what builds healthy blood and really builds our immune system. So dark leafy greens and the small veggies. So again, the things you can nibble, a nibble garden, the cherry tomato that you pop in your mouth, the peas that you pick, the green beans, that type of thing, the little leaves. And besides that, even thinking smaller than that, nutrient dense to our sprouts and shoots and microgreens. So we could take 1 square and plant 9 peas and just eat the couple inches of those pea shoots or sprouts or sunflower seeds. And they are loaded with nutrient fresh energy and vitamins that have come just steps from your kitchen door, picked a minute before you're sitting down to eat. So here's an example of our 4x4, 3x3, 2x2, and 1x1 boxes. So starting out, our basic format is really the 4x4, but you can see the progression to fit your small space. And even that 2x2 has 1 eggplant, 4 lettuces, 9 peas, and 16 carrots in 1 square. Or chunk it down to just that 1 little box for your grandchild and plant 1, 4, 9, or 16. Next square, next slide. This is a fun example of growing up. Maybe we don't want to all be crawling around on our ground. Maybe we can think tabletop. So this is a fun picture of Mel on the left, teaching his friends how to square foot garden as they're standing up. So again, square foot gardening is perfect for all ages and all abilities. And we have options to stand up or sit down garden. How great is that for someone who's in a wheelchair to be able to get right in there? And of course, square foot gardening brings people together. So we bridge generations by teaching square foot gardening and sharing. This is a fun picture of Mel's mom with the first tabletop garden. And again, you know, think generations, think parents, grandparents, children, singles, from the tiniest little hands to all ages, and again, all abilities. Everybody can learn these life skills, where their food comes from, boost their health from a box, a square foot gardening box. So I encourage each of you to find a certified instructor in your area, in your corner of the globe, and to reach out to us. So thanks for listening, and let's hear from Deborah Stewart in New Jersey.
Hi, everybody. This is Deb in Rowan, New Jersey. I also am a master gardener. I found out about square foot gardening a little while back, a few years ago, and said, let me check it out. Let's see what this is about. And I will say to you, my husband and I agree that there is no reason that anyone should not be doing gardening, especially when it comes to square foot gardening. We remember back in the day that we would have to turn the soil and all of that as well, but it's just so much easier. So basically, why did I do this and what do I do? I help out with the YMCA supporting their programs with summer camps, their square foot gardenings. I have learned that the different vegetables that I grow in my community garden, there are so many out there that I never even grew, ate, tasted, thought of. And now I've experienced collard greens, okra. My gardeners help me with how to grow them and how to harvest and what to watch for and give me recipes. And that's another big part of a community garden, is that you meet different people, you learn different techniques. We help each other. It could be that we're going to grow zucchini. We're going to grow that vertically instead of having it on the ground and doing what we do there and watching for the different things and how to protect things. All these things are things that you would learn when you take Square foot Gardener instructor. One other part is what I do like to talk about is the jars at the bottom of the mid of the slide there. That's my jarring, and that's something that by having extra food in the garden, what I do is we do donate. We've donated around 600 pounds of food to the church property that we are on the community garden. But I also jar because, let's face it, through the winter months, to have some string beans or tomatoes or whatever it is that I want to cook with, I want to know I've grown it organically. I want to know that it's been in safe soil. It's been in the Mel's mix. It doesn't have any chemicals, any man-made chemicals put on to the plants, and I know that they're clean. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay, so here we have, this is the Square foot Gardening. This is the section where it's just for small children. Well, it's a summer camp program that I was asked to teach. When these children walk into the garden and they see what they have planted and how it's grown and what they can eat, and they can share with their friends, they take it back to the school and they are just so happy to be able to have something to share. Another thing, while we're in the garden, the children used to be afraid of bees. This is something that they've learned to know that the bees are so important and to protect the environment rather than to go running around screaming and saying we have to kill them. No, they help us with our food. So such an important thing. I've had parents say to me, because I'll be in the garden when the kids are picked up from aftercare, I wish they had this when I was young. I wish that somebody would have taught us all these things in gardening and how we can create our own food. Can I have the next slide, please? This slide I absolutely love. What we like to do here is something, again, that you'll find in the book, that you can set seed early in the season. So this was in March, early March, that this person helped me with setting the seeds. And the reason that we covered it was because it was beautiful during the day, you can see this, but at nights the temperatures did go down. So this is something that in this area, it's more for my gardeners to learn that you can start your harvests early, you can plant your plantings early, and then you can also, when it comes around to end of summer, when you want to be careful again to cover your crops. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay, this is something that is very near and dear to me. How to regrow food. A lot of people will take a celery once it's grown into the grocery store. And again, I go after organic. And what I want to do is I want to regrow it. And what'll happen is you take this into a shallow dish with water. After a few days, you start seeing it kind of growing up from the center, and then you'll see the roots start to come out. Once the roots start to come out, what we like to do here is put it into just a flower pot, set up a square pot where you can see all the roots and the plant's growing well, everything's coming along. Now, remember, this was something that I cut off from the original plant, and now I'm going to regrow it. And now that it has good roots, what I'll do is I'll pop it into the soil, into the box, and that is a 1-by-1 box. The other part of this slide is my garlic. I have learned to grow garlic about 8 years ago. I have not bought garlic since. We start out with the bulb that we've grown, and I save it every summer at the end of it. And then I take the bulbs, the cloves, separate them. They're put into the ground, grown, and then the picture on the last picture there is where it was harvested. With COVID this past year, I remember walking into a grocery store. You could not get fresh vegetables. You could not find organic fresh vegetables. So what happened was I really came to know that growing, especially in square foot gardening style, that's so easy. And I really cannot stress it enough to take the course and to learn the method and to be a part of it and to have really homegrown vegetables that you know where they were grown. As I can say, square foot gardening, 1 square foot at a time. And I thank you for being here and listening to me today. I believe we are going back to Steve or Laura.
Thank you, Deborah. I'm actually going to jump in with some questions now from the audience. So to kick us off, we have received lots of questions about Mel's Mix, and we would like to clarify that it cannot be bought pre-made. Amy, do you have any tips on making Mel's Mix? How can someone on a tight budget make Mel's Mix in an affordable way?
I do, of course. Again, it's really about the compost. So we mentioned Cultiva International in Guatemala, other inner city projects for square foot gardening. And even in this past year, it's been a challenge for people to leave their homes. They don't want to go shopping. Maybe they can get a delivery from their local mom and pop garden center. But composting is a great way to get started. Compost happens. We have experts here. That's a whole nother topic. Compost does take time to make, but still it's keeping your scraps out of the landfill and it's creating soil. It's the first steps to creating soil for your square foot garden. I guess that's
Yeah,
a bit of an answer. It's a whole topic.
thank you, Amy.
Sure.
The next question we have is about pest control. So Deborah from the audience mentioned that she heard marigolds are a natural pesticide, but her kale is being eaten in the next square. And we have also received comments about keeping squirrels and deers out of the garden. Deborah, do you have any advice for keeping pests away?
Yes, in the book, it actually does speak of it. You can build with like a chicken wire, a frame to keep the animals out. That is something that I would recommend. I myself have had to use rabbit wire around my square foot garden that I have in my driveway to keep feral cats and different things away. Mhm.
Great, thank you, Deborah. So Michael from the audience wants to know about growing herbs. What is the best time of year to grow herbs? Are there herbs that are better grown inside or outside? And what herbs could be grown all year round? Althea, do you have any suggestions for the herbs?
Well, herbs are one of the easier things to grow. There's some that are more tender than others that need the warmer weather. There are herbs that are perennial. There are some that are biennial, so it really depends. Your basil is a tender herb that needs really warmth in order to grow. It does not do well if it gets cold or frost or anything like that. There are herbs like oregano and thyme that are so hardy. Herbs such as sage that grows into a bush. It's so easy to grow and it's good for you. I hear they're doing studies on how it could help Alzheimer's and memory. So different herbs need different care. Some are more tender than others. Parsley is very easy in terms, and it's a biennial, I believe, and it comes back. I've had really good success with oregano, thyme, sage, parsley. Those are chives are really good. I mentioned chives before. Those are perennials. The stems are edible. The flower florets on the top, the puffy balls on top are also edible, the beautiful flowers. So herbs, I would say dive in, try your hand at it. Some are easier to grow than others, but give it a try.
Thank you, Althea. Amy, we have another question for you. Marcia would like to know if her old square foot gardening bed can be reclaimed. She says she's left it unattended and weeds have started to grow. Is there anything she can do to make it usable again, or does she have to start from scratch?
Absolutely. As long as the sides are seeming to be there enough, get right in there and pull any weeds and junk out and add compost. Again, compost is where all the nutrients come from. I've done this a lot with old beds that are falling apart. As long as there's a weed cloth underneath, you should be good to go. And just add compost to the top and you'll be in good shape to get planted. Put a grid on, don't forget the grid, and then plant 1, 4, 9, 16 in each square of what you'd like to grow and eat.
Thank you. Emilio, we have a question for you now related to the last question. So Joy has asked what type of wood is best to create a square foot garden bed. Do you have any recommendations for what you can use?
Yeah, I've seen a combination of using both untreated and also pressure treated wood. A lot of people feel that they should put a barrier between the pressure treated wood and the soil. So if that's something you choose to use because the wood will not rot away from ground contact as quickly, then you can put a cloth barrier in between the actual soil and the box to stop any concerns about leaching any chemicals into the soil. Although I have my understanding now is that many of the treated woods are quite a bit safer than they used to be, but still. If you use untreated wood, then I often have seen a lot of gardeners here use boiled linseed oil as a plant-based weather seal. And so adding some of that will get you a few more years out of the wood before it starts to rot away. But other than that, you can use anything. You can if you want to spend a little bit more money and have a harder wood, you could use cedar. If you would like to, a lot of lumber yards just stock like a pine or a spruce, or in this area, all of those are fine. I've gotten long life out of various kinds of wood. So
great, thank you. So now another question, I think, for Deborah. We've had someone ask, what about growing mushrooms? Are they easy or hard to grow? And do you have any recommendations for growing mushrooms?
I have not grown mushrooms.
Okay.
That I would beg somebody else to answer.
Has anyone grown mushrooms, or do we go to the next question?
Next question.
Okay, Amy, back to you. What is a good alternative to peat moss? We had some concerns about peat moss. And also, do you have any suggestions about vermiculite? We had a comment that vermiculite is hard to come across due to a shortage with the pandemic. Are there any substitutions?
Peat moss can be substituted with coco coir, COCOCOIR, coco coir. I do not have experience with that. The peat moss makes the soil light and fluffy and friable and helps the water drain out so it doesn't get too soggy or too dry. In answer to the vermiculite question, we often order from Uline, and we want coarse grade, which is, I believe, 4. It comes in 4 cubic foot bags, usually 2 per box. It is a little pricey. When possible, we highly recommend making the Mel's mix yourself on a tarp, equal parts by volume of the compost from at least 5 sources, the peat moss and the coarse vermiculite. But when we cannot, again, just use as many varieties of compost as possible.
Thank you. And Amy, someone wondered if they can't find coarse vermiculite, is regular vermiculite okay, or does it have to be coarse vermiculite?
Mel used to be a stickler about sticking with coarse vermiculite. I'm aware of finer vermiculite. It doesn't quite achieve the same quality. Vermiculite comes from mica, where it's heated, mined from the earth. It's heated to like 2000 degrees. It pops like popcorn. So think about mica from science class and layers where water can hang out in there and be, the perfect soil additive without pesticides or herbicides for your square foot garden.
Thank you. Emilio, another question for you. Does the square foot gardening method, but specifically Mel's mix, work in small containers on a balcony as opposed to in the standard raised bed? Have you had experience with this?
Yeah, limited experience. We have added the Mel's mix to pots that we put around the square foot garden just for some extra spaces. So I don't see why you'd have any issue with that. If you're talking about really small pots to start seedlings, that may be a little different. You may want more of a ready-made potting soil. But if you're talking about something that's about a square foot, then I don't see why not. We've had some success growing herbs and flowers like that.
Thank you. Althea, Mitch has asked, can you use string or rope instead of wood to make the squares on a gardening bed? Are you, if you're talking, Althea, you're muted.
I can help on that if you'd like.
Thank you, Amy.
Mel used to use string, but he would say, ouch, because that string has to be connected to the wood somehow, and the string will deteriorate more quickly over time. Some people use parachute cord, some people use string or twine, but it needs to be replaced more often. Most of us, as you saw, it's really the grid that defines the box as a square foot garden. So you want it prominent and permanent. So wood, we could use old yardsticks for a 3 foot by 3 foot garden. I've seen people use what you have, what's free, what's on your property, where can you save pennies on your garden project. Arrows, believe it or not. I've seen people use old Venetian blinds. So there are other materials. So look around and think creatively for what you have and what your budget is.
We love creativity. Thank you, Amy. So that's actually all the time we have for questions today. So Laura, if you're ready, I'm going to hand it off to you to just speak a little bit about the online courses that the Square Foot Gardening Foundation offers.
Thank you. Thank you, Ella. I want to just first thank our panels because you guys did an awesome job, and I can see how excited you are about Square Foot Gardening, as am I, because we know it works. It's 40+ years. It's not an experiment. So we're going to get some slides up. So you guys have tons of questions, and the best way to get your questions answered, I would say, start with the PPC course, but we have really put together an online course that will give you all the answers that you need to get you started, and that would be the level 1 course. And for this particular webinar, the registrants are going to get a discount. Normally it's $29.95. We are going to give it to you guys, and Ella will give you a code for that, for $10 savings, which ends the end of the month. So take advantage of that. The level 1 course is really visual. We have fun, exclusive videos. You'll see old film footage of Mel that have not been shown anywhere. So to get you started, I would suggest take the online course, especially if you're a visual learner. If you like to use a book, we suggest Square Foot Gardening, all new Square Foot Gardening 3rd edition. If you get both, that is really going to give you everything you need. But connect with the CI for sure. What is the next slide you have here, Kelly? We do have a level 2 course. So level 1 would be the beginner course, and the certified instructor course would be the level 2. So there are quizzes after each segment, after each module. Once you take the level 1 course, if you decide to become a certified instructor, the level 1 is actually the prerequisite for level 2. Once you pass the level 2, we have certain requirements that you must meet in order to become a certified instructor. Once you do become a certified instructor, you get the full support of the foundation behind you. You get lots of downloads. You get access to grant money. We'd love to see people starting Square Foot Gardens in their community, especially community gardens. You know how you go in there in July and your tomatoes are laying all over the place. We want to try and change that food waste that's going on in community gardens. That's where the grids really do come in. You'll learn all about that. What's the next slide, Kelly? What do you have on the next one?
It's the wrap up for Ella.
Oh, it's a wrap up for Ella. Okay. So we do have the coupon. Ella's going to give you guys that. I'll just wrap this up real quick. Please check out www.squarefootgardening.org. Our event calendar is there. You'll see all our events. We have special events for CIs. When you become a CI, you will get all of that. Contact us at info@squarefootgardening.org. I see you guys got questions firing at us left and right. We can answer a lot of questions, especially if you guys get involved with our Facebook page. You can talk to a whole community of over 70,000 Square Foot gardeners on our official Facebook page. Always look for that green and yellow logo, because lots of people are out there giving Square Foot gardening advice, and we cannot, verify what they're telling you is accurate. So please look for our official websites, logos, all of that. You'll see that little green and yellow logo. That's us. And we'd love to see you guys get growing and show us your photos of your Square Foot gardens. It's not too late. And learn all about Mel's Mix and everything else to get you going. And you will have success if you follow this method, I guarantee you. I never vegetable gardened before, and I can't believe what I'm growing in 6 inches of Mel's Mix. So get started, it's not too late. Okay, Ella, I think I got everything.
Yep, I think you got everything. We posted a lot of links in the chat, so attendees can click on the information that way. Okay. And I'm just here to wrap up the webinar. So thank you to everyone for joining us, and a special thank you to our expert speakers for sharing your knowledge about the Square Foot Garden or Square Foot Gardening method. And this webinar would not have been possible without the Square Foot Gardening Foundation. So also a big thank you to Laura and Steve. And you can get connected with the Square Foot Gardening Foundation on Facebook and Instagram. And also you can find PlantPure Communities on social media as well to connect with both of our organizations And please do tag us in your square foot gardening photos for a chance to be shared on our social media so we can encourage other people to get growing this growing season. So thank you everyone for attending, and
Thank
bye.
you.
Thank you, everybody. Happy gardening.
Thank you.